multi-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
This is my Star Trek review of the new movie, which I had to do. Now, the thing with Star Trek is that when people ask me what I thought about the movie, I said I think it's very fun, and I also think it's very dumb. So I'm going to try to explain each one of those assessments. Now, I think that the new Star Trek movie is very fun because, first of all, the script is pretty funny. It has a lot of one-liners. It has a lot of in-jokes for people who know Star Trek, for the Trekkies. Also, it's the fact that these actors that are in the movie, they're young, they're good-looking, you know, they're at the peak of their sexual prowess. And really, they're the kind of actors that you like to watch, and they're very likable and really very charming, each in their own little ways. I liked Chris Pine as Kirk, even though I think that he wasn't given necessarily the right material, because I don't think that Kirk really comes off as a very strong leader in this movie. He comes off as somebody who's very arrogant and very smart, but at the same time, because of the fact that he constantly gets his ass kicked by various people, and only at the end does he finally get to kick somebody's ass, he doesn't really come off as really Star Trek captain material. Zachary Quinto as Spock is a bit better, but at the same time I think they gave Spock way too much emotional baggage. Spock is pretty much the most emotional character in this movie, and that's a paradox. Carl Urban as Leonard McCoy was great. I think he's one of the it's one of the best interpretations in the movie in terms of how similar he is to DeForest Kelley. But my favorite is Simon Pegg, simply because of the enthusiasm you feel when you see him. He is so excited, and he's so happy to be on that set, and so happy to be in this movie, and you really feel that in his performance, even though it's a pretty short performance. I kind of liked John Cho as Sulu and Zoe Saldana as Uhura, but with these secondary characters, including Anton Yelchin as Chekhov, him I didn't really like. But when it comes to this particular group of characters, I just feel like they gave them something to do in the first half of the movie, and after that they kind of disappear, and it becomes all about Kirk and Spock, and old Spock even. The villain for me is a big problem, because this ties into my belief that the new Star Trek is pretty dumb, and the villain is part of it. Although I love Eric Bana, I usually love his work, but his villain was very generic and very one-dimensional, and he had we saw little glimpses of the genius that this character could have been, because I really liked, for instance, when he was talking to Captain Pike and he was using his first name, like, hello Christopher, and tell me Christopher, and this. It felt like he was trying to breed some sense of familiarity with Captain Pike, and he was talking to him like he was his equal, and that was a little glimpse of genius that I really liked in the character, but unfortunately it wasn't really played out that way. Nero is a very one-dimensional character, very uninteresting if you ask me. Why do I think that the new Star Trek is dumb? Well, story-wise, there are so many plot holes, and there are so many things that scientifically and narratively just don't make any kind of sense, beginning with the premise of the movie. The main premise, which is that Romulans come back from the future, go back in time to take revenge on the Federation for the destruction of their planet. I mean, their planet was destroyed by a supernova, and as far as I know, the Federation had nothing to do with that. You know, in this universe, and pretty much in the universe, sometimes shit just happens and you have to deal with it. I also didn't like the idea that they went back like 100-some years in the past and they don't do anything to actually save Romulus. They just kind of hang around in space for 25 years waiting for Spock. I know that at some point in the movie they mentioned that, oh, we're not interested in necessarily saving our homeworld, we want to destroy the Federation while we're at it. but they don't do anything to actually save their homeworld, or at least nothing that we see. Now, from the point of view of a Trekkie, and this is entirely subjective, I'm not saying that this should be a problem with anybody else, but I think that J.J. Abrams takes a lot of liberties with the material and makes some pretty major changes. The idea of destroying Vulcan and the idea of Spock and Uhura having a relationship. It's not that I'm opposed to these changes, but I wish they would have handled them with a bit more respect and a bit more exposition. Because okay, you want to destroy Vulcan, whatever, but at least acknowledge the fact that it's a pretty big fucking deal. Because Vulcan is destroyed, and at the end, old Spock and the new Spock are talking, and old Spock is like, go on, live your life, go on a crazy wild adventures with Kirk and his green aliens. Never mind that your planet and your race was, you know, destroyed. Just go on and live your life. Don't think about it anymore. And I don't have a problem with Spock and Uhura having a relationship. I just wish it would have been we would have gotten a bit more exposition to understand why these characters are in a relationship to begin with, because it feels like this stuff was just thrown in our face and we pretty much have to deal with it. So in conclusion, the new Star Trek movie is entertaining, but at the same time, since it's the Star Trek of a new generation, it kind of takes away from some of the things that I love about Star Trek, which is the fact that it always, especially Star Trek The Next Generation, it felt like it brought a certain sense of elegance and class to the idea of science fiction. It was very polished and very disciplined and classy and whatever, and this feels truly like it was made for the MTV generation, in the sense that everything is so bright and everything is so loud and everything is so sharp and the lines have to be so sarcastic and ironic, and really it kind of takes away from what I love about Star Trek, but at the same time I recognize the entertainment value in it. It's just not my Star Trek. But at the same time, I think we've gotten to the point where Star Trek can survive its multiple interpretations. So here's to a new interpretation of an old tale.